During the years of 2001 to 2009, George W. Bush became the President of the United States. Many would say that the duties he took part in were a success, while others would contradict and come to the conclusion that during 9/11, the invasion in the Middle East, and Hurricane Katrina, Bush's efforts were controversial as he evoked a reputation for himself. Near the end of his presidency, Bush became known for acting in slow motion, which is evident through his contributions made. This of many reasons why people state that George W. Bush was an ineffective president. It all began on September 11, 2001, where the terrorist group Al-Qaeda hijacked 4 airliners and carried out suicide attacks on the United States. 2 of the planes crashed into the Twin Towers in New York, the 3rd plane hit the Pentagon just outside Washington, D.C., and the 4th plane crashed in a field in Pennsylvania. Over 3,000 people were killed during the attacks on September 11th, which is why this event is referred to as the 9/11. The attacks on the United States were a defining moment for President George W. Bush, as many believe he was not effective while dealing with this challenge. When the news had arrived that there had been an attack on the Twin Towers, Bush would remain in his location for an extra 39 minutes reading books to elementary students. When later asked about when he learned about the attack, he had many different stories. One where he said that he was outside the classroom waiting to go in when he saw the airplane hit the tower shown on the TV and thought it was a small airplane incident. This is strange due to the fact that there was no film footage that was released of the first attack until the next day, and Bush didn't have access to a TV in the classroom. He may have confused the first plane for the second, although he said that he was in the classroom and Card had whispered into his ear that the second plane had hit. This can be proven true when examined video evidence of the classroom during this precise moment. It can be determined that Andrew Card whispers into his ear, "A second plane has hit the tower, America is under attack." This piece of evidence allows America to see exactly how Bush reacted. Unfortunately for him, an adequate amount of people in the United States witnessed Bush do absolutely nothing for 20 additional minutes after learning about the attacks from Card. Why did Bush do nothing once he found out about the attacks? Unfortunately, Bush had never been asked to explain why he was so confused with his statement and/or why he didn't respond immediately to Card. More interestingly, during his speech to the nation, he said, "Immediately following the first attack, I implemented our government's
emergency response plans."
There was an enormous media reaction as to why Bush reacted the way he did. For example, recently Donald Trump stated, "Former President George W. Bush did not keep the country safe because of the September 11, 2001 terrorist attacks. I've heard for years he kept the country safe after the 9/11. What does that mean, after? What about during the 9/11? I was there. I lost lots of friends that were killed in that building. The worst attack ever in this country, and it was during his presidency." This is evidence that even an imbecile like Donald Trump can recognize that George W. Bush did near to nothing during the attacks due to the fact that he didn't know what to do. He was a figurehead, that is a person that is just there for the label. This is also evident through the fact that when Card told him that there had been another attack, Card quickly backed off, considering that Bush shouldn't be getting involved in the situation by reason of his lack of knowledge towards what to do for the dilemma. In the first term of Bush's presidency, the United States had attacks against them formerly known as the 9/11. In the following month, Bush's response was to invade Afghanistan and attempt to overthrow the Taliban government. The reason done so was solely due to the fact that Osama bin Laden, the leader of the terrorist group Al-Qaeda, was said to be hiding there in their headquarters. Unfortunately, bin Laden was not captured for another decade. Then in the spring of 2003, the United States invaded Iraq in order to overthrow their leader, Saddam Hussein, who was accused of supporting international terrorist groups and possessing large weapons of mass destruction. The Bush administration cast had interfered that Hussein had been in cahoots with bin Laden and had been building nuclear weapons on his behalf. Finally, in December 2003, the U.S. forces captured Hussein, and he was later executed by Iraq officials. After the investigation, it is safe to decipher that George W. Bush was effective in dealing with this challenge, only for the exception that it came fairly late. The second fault to his plan was that they didn't know for a fact that Osama would be in Afghanistan. In fact, after the invasion, bin Laden was nowhere to be found and remained in hiding for another decade. As Bush is known for making slow and rash decisions, the effectiveness in his plans may have been effective if they were made earlier. Once again, George W. Bush is stuck in slow motion. As the attack on Iraq commenced, the influence on media coverage resulted in segments of post-war bias and during-war bias. This is highly evident on the TV channel Fox News, where the owner Rupert Murdoch, a strong supporter of the war, had told the television animators to put an American flag animation in the upper right corner and on the bottom put Operation Iraqi Freedom. Another television channel, MSNBC, also installed the American flag on the screen and regularly ran a tribute called America's Bravest. Overall, the invasion/attacks on Afghanistan and Iraq were both effective and not effective, as they captured the Iraq leader Saddam Hussein and safely dispersed all nuclear weapons, but were also highly ineffective due to how long it took Bush to make the decision on what to do in order to prevent any further terrorist attacks on the United States. Not only time management, but by invading Afghanistan, hundreds of soldiers died looking for bin Laden when ultimately he wasn't even there. This proves how Bush's decisions to invade Afghanistan were detrimental, as it led to numerous soldiers' deaths and didn't provide an outcome to where Osama could possibly be. On the morning of August 29, 2005, a devastating hurricane took place on the Gulf Coast of the United States. It brought winds of 100 to 140 miles per hour and stretched 400 miles across. Hurricane Katrina is currently ranked as the third most intense tropical storm in the United States by reason that it caused over 1,200 deaths, costed $108 billion in damage, and was classified as a Category 3 hurricane when touched down in Louisiana. The aftermath of the hurricane was detrimental as it led to massive flooding and affected millions of people due to the fact that the hurricane destroyed homes, hospitals, businesses, and impacted the economy of the entire coast. Unfortunately, during this disaster, George W. Bush was too fixated on the larger outcome that was not accurate, rather than narrowing down the cities which would evidently be in the path of the hurricane and affected the most. On August 27th and 28th, George W. Bush issued a state of emergency in the selected regions of Louisiana, Alabama, Mississippi, and spoke to the governor to encourage the evacuation of New Orleans. As this may be seen as a positive outcome of Bush performing his duties, he was once again a figurehead. This can be found true when realized that Bush didn't make any executive calls on this hurricane. He was once again told what to do, and he did it. In fact, when observing this situation in higher detail, the people of the United States began to question as to why Bush had not declared a state of emergency on any of the coastal cities of New Orleans, for example, Jefferson or Plaquemines. This issue of emergency did not include any of Louisiana's coastal cities, but did include Mississippi's coastal cities. This was investigated in higher detail when Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, Chief Michael Brown testified that the governor that Bush spoke to about the evacuation systems, Governor Blanco, did not include any of the coastal cities in Louisiana or in New Orleans in her initial request for aid. After Brown came to this conclusion, Blanco quickly released a copy of the letter which showed the requesting assistance for all of the coastal cities. Strangely, before this mismatch in ideas, Bush had only declared evacuation on Louisiana, Alabama, and Mississippi, not any of the coastal cities. This event emphasizes how unqualified Bush is for the job, as he was told where the hurricane would pass through, but was too distressed by remaining the figurehead of the United States that he failed to remember which cities were in the most danger. This delusion resulted in hundreds of injuries in the coastal cities. Not only this, but when given the opportunity to assist Louisiana by allowing the federal government to take over the relief effort, Bush decided that it would be best if the local and lower governments did the work of their aiding in Louisiana. Criticism of the government's response to Hurricane Katrina flooded the media stations, which consisted primarily of the media insulting lack of preparation in the relief effort. Criticism was prompted largely by televised images of visibly shaken and frustrated political leaders and the residents who remained in New Orleans without water, food, or shelter, and the death of several citizens by thirst, exhaustion, and violence. Bush seemed slow off the mark as millions of people suffered, and he created a lasting image of isolation when the White House released photos of him, a solitary figure in his cushy seat, looking out a window on Marine One as the hurricane devastation far below, says U.S. News reporter Kenneth T. Walsh. In the end, George W. Bush can be seen as a highly ineffective president due to the fact that he was constantly in slow motion and had no recollection of how to perform duties on his own. In matter of fact, when told what to do, he mismanaged the situation and made it worse for the people of America, which is evidently why George W. Bush can be thought of as one of the most incompetent and ineffective presidents of the United States.
It's given.